even though it was very close. I know the Bella Vista police had driven along the paved road a couple times looking for the car, and they said that they drove, right by it.
Now, the Camaro, the person where the Camaro was found on was arrested, correct?
That's correct. The Camaro is a little bit different story. And again, we don't know exactly what happened. Right now, the Camaro was discovered in a residence probably about 4 miles away from where it was taken. And he has an interesting story. He didn't actually take the car, but he traded two cars worth about $5,000 for the Corvette and the Camaro. At least that's his story.
Oops. He got the bad end of that deal, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard 10-year-olds make up fantasy stories that are a little more believable than that. But
right.
I suppose that's his statement.
Right. Now he's the owner of that property there?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't know if he owned it or was living in it, but once the Corvette was discovered, there was some information, and again, I don't know how the police obtained the information, but the information on the Corvette led to go into this particular residence and recovering the Camaro.
Okay. Now, prior to the thefts, what measures had you taken to secure the cars?
They were in a locked building, and both, I guess, my father and I are pretty trusting folks. I mean, if people have an interest in cars, we'll stop and we'll show them. I think, which is pretty common in the car industry. So, I would say our guard was down, and we were just perhaps a little naive on the risks. So the building was locked. There was an alarm system on the building, but in this particular area, there's quite a few lightning storms, and when these lightning storms happen, it's fairly common that it knocks out the security system, and it did on this back building, and it just hadn't been repaired yet. So. Well, we don't take blame for the theft. I mean, in hindsight, there's always things that you can do differently. And, so that's been remedied, as well as some additional security measures.
Right. Yeah, that was my next question. What are you going to do to secure them for the future?
Well, I'd prefer not to say, but let's just say that there's going to be a lot of different security measures taken so that this doesn't happen again. At least to any of our cars, and gosh, I hope it doesn't happen again to anyone.
Yes. Well, according to the Insurance Institute, it's best to have a layer type security system. In other words, not just rely on one specific thing, and that goes for just really cars in themselves. Especially with the newer the Camaros and the Corvettes with the VAT system. It's got several things built in with the alarm and then the disabling of the car's starting system. So hopefully you'll be able to get those taken care of, and you won't have to go through this again. Now, the Corvette did not sustain too much damage, am I correct?
That's correct. We don't know for sure. I can't tell you exactly what's wrong with the Corvette because we haven't had an opportunity to put it up on a lift. And we'll be doing that in the next few weeks. But it sustained a little bit of damage from being driven through a field. To put this into perspective, when the tow company pulled these cars out of the field, they used chainsaws to take down trees and limbs and cut brush. And so when the thieves put it in the field, they didn't use a chainsaw to get it in there. So we don't know if there's any damage on the bottom of the car. And then there's a little bit of scratches on the paint, and looks like the tailpipe has been dented somehow. So in any case, that's generally the condition of the Camaro or the Corvette. We're very, very fortunate.
Right, and unfortunately, the Camaro, looking at the photographs that you sent us, the Camaro did not fare too well at all.
No, And I suppose if there was a blessing in the whole thing, the Corvette was grossly underinsured, and would have been a big financial loss if they would have done what they did to the Corvette that they ended up doing to the Camaro. And the Camaro is insured for what I believe the value of it is. And we've had an adjuster out. We use Haggerty for our insurance, and Haggerty sent a representative out just to take a look at the cars, and his comment was, well, it might be totaled. So we're working over the next few weeks to have a couple different restorers take a look at it and kind of give us an estimate on what it's going to take to put that car back in condition. I mean, the Corvette was mostly original. It had one paint job on it, probably in the 80s, late 80s. It had been repainted, and it had the interior done. The Camaro was more or less done. I mean, it was a number one car. You'd see that thing on the street, and the paint was shiny. There wasn't a nick on it. And if people would like to see pictures of what that Camaro and even the Corvette getting pulled out, they can go on Facebook and search for Simple Pleasures Event Center. And when I first saw those pictures, I thought, well, that's not too bad. I mean, we've got another car that we've done a ground up restoration on, and we've taken it down to bare metal. And I said, I know it can be fixed, but once I got down there, I'm just scratching my head for what an idiot that this guy was for taking a car that was didn't need a darn thing. And for example, they pulled the trim off, and instead of pulling it off right, they just yanked it as hard as they could. So there's holes and oblong holes where trim was, and they decided not to take all the trim off, I guess because they wanted to drive it. I'm not sure. So they just painted over the SS emblems and trim molding around the wheel wells. They just painted right over it. So the car was originally Cortez silver with black stripes, and it's now sort of a black color with a little bit of primer, and they did a pretty poor job, as well as when we recovered the car, the trunk was off, the hood was just laying in there. I mean, all the hardware is off the hood, and they painted the engine compartment and took off the cowl tag, and just generally made a mess of the car.
Wow. I hope maybe they'll decide on another line of work and stay out of car theft and car restoration, huh?
Yeah, I'm pretty hopeful that he'll be picking up trash on the side of a road for a few years. But
that'd be nice to see.
Have to see. We'll have to see how that plays out.
Now, how has Haggerty been to deal with?
They've been great. They've been great. I mean, up to this point, we just don't know a whole lot. But I had some damage done to a 50 Cadillac probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and they were fantastic. I mean, I sent them a bid, and they sent the check to the shop, and the shop got it taken care of, and they're fantastic. So I would expect them to be great again. But at this point, I understand that they try to take care of these things pretty quickly, and now that we've got the cars back, and we're sorting through some paperwork, and the Bella Vista police are finishing up their investigation, I would imagine that things should be zipped up in the next 30 days or so.
Okay, good. Now, tell us a little bit about it. Is there any stories behind the Camaro? I mean, you had some really good stories with the Corvette. How did you acquire the Camaro, and what was that deal?
The Camaro I bought in a Mecum auction in December of 2004 in Kansas City, and my wife and I had sort of been talking about buying another car, but we hadn't discussed it in general. It's sort of one of those passing things, and she said, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever." And it was sort of I took it as more of a blow-off comment than anything else, but that was about 2 or 3 weeks before this auction, and so we go to this auction, and my father and I are there, and we see this car. It looks really, really great, and so we investigated a little further. It goes across the block, and so I buy it at auction, and I drive it home, and she was out at the time, and so I parked it in her space, and I backed it in, and so she pulled it up to the garage and opened the door and parked outside and kind of stumbled inside. And at this point, I think she was about 5 months pregnant with our first child, and she comes in and she says, "Oh, that's a cool car in the garage. I bought another one, huh?" I said, "No, that one's ours." She says, "Are you planning on sleeping in it?" And I said, "Well,
I was
going
to ask you if the doghouse, had a place with your name on it."
Yeah, and so I said, "I don't know, am I?" And she said, "Well, we'll see." And so about an hour later, she came back and said, No, you don't have to sleep in it." So that was, I joke around a little bit when people ask about the sentimental value on the cars. I said, well, if I lost the Camaro, the only thing sentimental about it is I wouldn't recall that week and a half that I had to sleep in it. But,
well, is your wife able to be cloned? Because I'm sure that a lot of us car owners out there would appreciate having a wife with a good sense of humor like that, especially being pregnant.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I've had a couple friends tell me that I married well over my head, and I tend to agree with them, not just on car issues. But,
well, you can tell her from Ashur Conrad that she's okay in our book. Okay.
I'll do it.
Last wrap-up question: do you have any advice for other owners of vintage Corvettes or Camaros, or even just any type of antique vintage car?
Yeah, I would say don't take the security for granted would be the number one thing. And if something like this happens, try to get the word out as fast as you can. Because we had two cars taken in, and it was such a high dollar value, then local news channels were interested. And also there was a family, kind of a family story. So I know that isn't necessarily going to be the case with everybody. Some people might have a prized pickup, but it's their prized pickup. I would just say try to get the word out. Try to create a story around it so that the media is interested in it. And also I would encourage people just to get online and search for stolen cars or stolen classic cars, and just keep an eye out for these things. There was a gentleman in Oklahoma about 30 miles away from us. His name is Jason Phillips, and he's a car restorer, and he had a 1968 custom Camaro that was stolen in December of 2009. So not even a year ago, and he was very instrumental in providing us some information. Like, gosh, when I had a news channel out, we had a lot of publicity around it, and so it's things like that. He still hasn't had his that 1968 Camaro recovered, and it is a completely custom car. I guess it was insured for about $150,000. So I would just encourage any collectors that are listen to this. If you've got a few minutes, just get out there and do a quick search on stolen cars. Take a look at these cars and just keep your eyes wide open. I know one of the things that I'm going to do is keep a group of VIN numbers in my phone and of stolen cars that I'm aware of. And when I'm out at car shows, and I'm looking through engines, I'm gonna look in those blocks to see if I had access to those. I'm gonna look in those blocks, or look up in the window tag just to check. And because I would, I'd be delighted if I could help somebody experience what we experienced when those cars were returned to us.
Okay, good. Hey, you know what? To send us a list of those VIN numbers, and we can post them up on the blog there too, so people have them readily available. Erik Miner has been our guest today. Erik, we're so happy for you that although I know it's going to be a little painful for you, but it could have certainly been worse, as you said. We're glad that you got both your cars back. And stay in touch with us, and hopefully get us some pictures that the Camaro gets restored and the Corvette gets brought back to pristine condition. All right, Erik?
My pleasure, Ashur, and thank you very much. And we certainly appreciate everything the Corvette Mafia has done.